Special Counsel Jack Smith has just torched federal judge Eileen Cannon in a late-night filing where Smith has called Judge Cannon out for requiring the parties to engage with unlawful scenarios to provide hypothetical jury instructions that deal with the interplay between the Espionage Act and the Presidential Records Act. Special Counsel Jack Smith explains that both scenarios that Judge Cannon wants the parties to engage with are unlawful. And Jack Smith also says that if it is your intention to instruct the jury on any of these unlawful scenarios, Judge Cannon, you better let us know right this moment, because we intend to seek appellate review from the 11th Circuit to have you reversed, to order you to comply with the law, and potentially even to remove you from this case. The latter part, Special Counsel Jack Smith didn't expressly state in this filing, but that was certainly implied, and I'll show you in just a moment. Now, you'll recall that a few weeks back, Judge Eileen Cannon issued an order that required the parties to engage with these two scenarios. And here's what it says. It says, with respect to proposed language pertinent to the issue of unauthorized possession, specifically, the parties must engage with the following competing scenarios and offer alternative draft text that assumes each scenario to be a correct formulation of the law to be issued to the jury while reserving counter arguments. Now, you recall what I was saying here and what our other Legal AF hosts were saying here. We didn't think that Special Counsel Jack Smith was going to, quote, engage with either of these scenarios, both of which were unlawful. We thought that Special Counsel Jack Smith would say both are unlawful. I'm not engaging with that, but let me provide you with the correct jury instructions, the model instructions that have been used in this district and throughout the country on charges of Espionage Act violations in all cases that have gone before the federal judiciary. This is not a new statute. It's been around for about 100 years regarding the willful retention of national defense information, and we know how to provide jury instructions. But this distinction that Donald Trump wants to make, that the Presidential Records Act allows him to not only telepathically declassify records, but also to designate government national secrets as his own personal property, that simply isn't a accurate thing. That's just made up. It's false. It's fraudulent. That's not the law. It's absurd. It's asinine. And so, Judge Cannon, if you're doing anything with that as a premise, you have to let us know now, because we're going to go to the appellate court to get you reversed. Here are the two scenarios that you'll recall a few weeks back that Judge Cannon gave the parties on March 18th. She gave these scenarios. A, in a prosecution of a former president for allegedly retaining documents in violation of 18 U.S.C. section 793E, a jury is permitted to examine a record retained by a former president in his or her personal possession at the end of his or her presidency and make a factual finding as to whether the government has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that it is personal or presidential using the definition set forth in the Presidential Records Act. And B, a president has sole authority under the Presidential Records Act to categorize records as personal or presidential during his or her presidency. Neither a court nor a jury is permitted to make or review such a categorization decision, although there is no formal means in the PRA by which a president is to make that categorization. An outgoing president's decision to exclude what he/she concludes to be personal records from presidential records transmitted to the National Archives and Records Administration constitutes a president's categorization of those records as personal under the PRA. Now, when I read both of those scenarios, I'm like, those are both just completely unlawful. You can't steal national defense information and say that because you're a former president that you're allowed to do it, or that a jury or a court is not allowed to even rule on the issue. Like, what are you even talking about? And Special Counsel Jack Smith says the same right here. Here's what Special Counsel Jack Smith said in his filing. The court has issued an order. That's why I wanted to read you the order first, so you understand what Judge Cannon is saying. Jack Smith goes, the court has issued an order directing the parties to file preliminary proposed jury instructions and verdict forms for counts 1 through 32 of the superseding indictment, with a specific requirement that the parties, quote, engage with two competing scenarios and offer alternative draft text that assumes each scenario to be a correct formulation of the law to be issued to the jury. Both scenarios rest on an unstated and fundamentally flawed legal premise, namely that the Presidential Records Act, and in particular its distinction between personal and presidential records, determines whether a former president is authorized under the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. section 793E, to possess highly classified documents and store them in an unsecure facility despite contrary rules in Executive Order 13,526, which govern the possession and storage of classified information. That legal premise, like what you are asking us to engage with, Judge Eileen Cannon, that legal premise is wrong. And a jury instruction for Section 793 that reflects that premise would distort the trial. The Presidential Records Act distinction between personal and presidential records has no bearing on whether a former president's possession of documents containing national defense information is authorized under the Espionage Act, and the PRA, the Presidential Records Act, should play no role in the jury instructions on these elements. For Section 793. Indeed, based on the current record, the Presidential Records Act should not play any role at trial at all. Moreover, it is vitally important that the court, that you, Judge Cannon, promptly decide whether the unstated legal premise underlying the recent order does, in the court's view, represent a correct formulation of the law. Pause there. You see what Jack Smith's saying? That even though you're not saying this in this order because you want us to engage with hypothetical scenarios, the unstated legal premise that you're saying is that Donald Trump is above the law and that he has the ability to categorize national defense information however he wants and to take it with him, and he has special privileges that are not contained within the Espionage Act and not contained anywhere in the law based on your kind of unhinged legal theories that are being spread by, frankly, legal conspiracy theorists that this Presidential Records Act allows Donald Trump to steal records and classify our nuclear secrets however he wants. So let us know, Judge Cannon, if that's what you are trying to say, because, Jack Smith goes on to say, if the court wrongly concludes that it does, and that it intends to include the Presidential Records Act in the jury instructions regarding what is authorized under Section 793, it must inform the parties of that decision well in advance of trial. The government must have the opportunity to consider appellate review well before jeopardy attaches. So you know how I know a lot of you were concerned. I know a lot of legal analysts on YouTube were talking about, well, if Judge Cannon doesn't make a ruling now, allows a jury to be selected, so jeopardy attaches. So then if she dismisses the case, then Donald Trump can't be tried again and you can't appeal it. Jack Smith's well ahead of that. That's what I've been saying before. I'm not worried about that. Jack Smith's basically saying, let us know now if this is where you're going, or we're going to appeal you right now. We're not going to start trial with you not making a ruling now that you've revealed your hands that this is what you intend to do, Judge Eileen Cannon. And then they cite the case law that the adoption of clearly erroneous jury instructions that entails a high probability of failure of a prosecution, a failure the government could not then seek to remedy by appeal or otherwise, constitutes the kind of extraordinary situation in which we are empowered to issue the writ of mandamus. So Jack Smith saying, okay, let us know now if you're going to make this ruling so we can appeal you. And if you don't do that, we're going to seek a writ of mandamus. We're just going to go around your back at this point because you're so incompetent and so corrupt. We're going to file a writ of mandamus and go to the 11th Circuit. So you're now on the clock, Judge Eileen Cannon. It goes on to talk about cases that have permitted the government to obtain writs of mandamus, extraordinary writs, when judges are behaving in this egregious way. Goes on to say, if, for example, the court concludes as posited in scenario A in the court's order that under the Espionage Act, a former president is authorized to possess any document that the jury determines qualifies as a personal record as defined by the PRA, that would wrongly present the jury a factual determination that should have no legal consequence under the elements of Section 793. Likewise, if the court concludes as posited in scenario B, that a president has carte blanche to remove any document from the White House at the end of his presidency, that any document so removed must be retreated as a personal record under the PRA as unreviewable as a matter of law, and that also as a matter of law, a former president is forever authorized to possess such a document regardless of how highly classified it may be and how it is stored, that would constitute a, quote, clearly erroneous jury instruction that entails a high probability of failure for prosecution. And the government must be provided with an opportunity to seek prompt appellate review. In other words, we're about to go to the 11th Circuit. You're on the clock, Judge Eileen Cannon. Be aware. And then what Special Counsel Jack Smith does is exactly what I told you he was going to do. Go back and watch my videos. Jack Smith says, look, we are not engaging with your false legal premise. We're going to appeal you, and if you don't do anything, we're going to seek a writ of mandamus. But what we are going to do, Judge Cannon, is provide you with the correct model jury instructions that have always been used in this district, in the 11th Circuit, circuits across the country, and federal courts across the country for espionage cases. We're going to provide those instructions for you so you can see what it looks like. And that's what Special Counsel Jack Smith does. He provides the model jury instructions. He doesn't engage with the unlawful scenarios and puts Judge Cannon on notice that she's violating the law, that he's about to go to the 11th Circuit, that her time playing these games has run out, and that her putting these two scenarios to engage with shows what a corrupt and incompetent judge she is. And where Jack Smith's talking about the egregiousness of her behavior, trust me, what's implied there is we're going to remove you. You're not qualified. You're not competent. See you later, Judge Cannon. This is the motion that we have been waiting for, folks, and I'm glad that Jack Smith came out with this so strongly as he did. For the reasons set forth above and in the government's opposition to Trump's motion to dismiss based upon the Presidential Records Act, the court should reject the legal premise that the Presidential Records Act distinction between personal and presidential records has any bearing on the element of unauthorized possession under Section 793E, the Espionage Act. You can't go and steal our nuclear secrets and classified information and say that they're personal. That's not the way the law works in the United States of America. As such, the court should deny Trump's pending motion to dismiss and adopt preliminary jury instructions as proposed by the government above. If, however, the court does not reject the erroneous legal premise, it should make that decision clear now, long before jeopardy attaches, to allow the government the opportunity to seek appellate review. Signed, Special Counsel Jack Smith and Jay Bratt. A beautiful legal document here, and this is what we wanted to call out Judge Cannon.
It is Wednesday, the 3rd of April of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious the little Yorkie is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one? Oh yeah, we love to make obscure cinematic references because, hey, we're a salon and we do that. We can get away with most anything as long as, it enlightens and entertains. Okay, how about an hors d'oeuvre? This is a salon after all. Hey, how are you? Wow, lots of stuff went on overnight, huh? Jack Smith made his filing. Well, it was late for folks on the East Coast, right up to the deadline that she said, "Tell me what I want to know." And he said, what you want to know is that, well, sometimes an intervention has to be made. And apparently Jack Smith conducted an intervention. So there it was. And Midas Touch laid it out. David, earlier in his show, check out his podcast when it comes up, had a very succinct analysis as well. So this is where we are. We're essentially having judges now telling learned counsel for the government, I want you to tell me what color the sky is, and then give a counter argument. And while you're doing that, I want you to be on one knee. Okay? One knee. And he said, look, lady, this is how it is. I know you're having trouble keeping clerks, and it must be a disaster in that office of yours, but you can't keep doing this. I mean, if you can't handle it, if your office cannot handle it, if you're having trouble keeping your clerks from quitting, and then not being able to get anyone else coming in because, well, I don't know. If I was Jack Smith, I'd bring up the mobbed up husband. But that's just me. And that's why I'm here. And Jack Smith is doing what he's doing and doing it quite admirably. I'm already seeing little snippets of Jack Smith is just like Mary Garland. And I'm thinking, boy, I'd like to see the code of where that one came from. Is it in Cyrillic? I always like making that joke because I don't think that actually are I's and O's in Cyrillic, or are they just I's and O's no matter what? Well, the things we have to discuss on a metaphysical level now with our quantum mechanic computers. I only wish they were quantum mechanic, but they're coming soon. Okay. I've always wondered if artificial intelligence does evolve to the heights that some people fear and other people hope it reaches. Will people get really a lot more lazy in their thinking than they are now? Because artificial intelligence will take up the slack. I don't need to learn how to spell. autocorrect will do it for me. All right. We've been down that road before, and we know what happens. And you don't need to read science fiction novels about a dystopian future to know what could happen, and is looking like we're getting very close to it right now, including all of the acid rain and the weird kind of environment, in terms of climate and weather patterns and chaos and people being moved about, whole populations being moved about because of, that place down there is flooded out. Learn to live among the reeds. Okay. Well, maybe we all will. Floating mats among the reeds. How many high-rises will be on that? Oh, boy. Well, I don't know how we got so flung far afield. Well, I have an idea. But I like to, be rhetorical. But regardless, what else has been going on in the world? Oh, I should also remind folks on a personal note, a couple of things. Friday, no show. We'll be taking Mom in for that next procedure. So, no show on Friday, so we'll see you next Monday. I hope. I'm sure that I will be, because she should be home by then, and it should be okay. I think I could do a show right after, for several days afterwards. She's going to need a bit more care, so, we may have to put some longer clips on, and we'll be okay. But Friday, no show. Though next Tuesday, I have to look to see it once again. We may have an abbreviated show or some other type of format, because little Precious goes in for her first knee surgery, and then she'll have one after that when she's recovered from the first. So we have a few months of that going on, and it's only, she's been hobbling around. She's been doing a lot better, kind of using that back leg, but I want her to kind of not damage it any more than what it already has been, so that it can get repaired. So, once again, to remind folks, little puppy type dogs like Yorkshire Terriers have issues with their kneecaps and the structure of their legs. Sometimes they get bull-legged. But the kneecaps get pulled out of alignment, and it's quite painful. I've had that happen to me, and when they put it back into place, it's quite a job for the person doing it. And this is like by sports medicine type guys, non-surgical, actual manipulation of pulling the kneecap back into place. Well, what happens is that sometimes little stalactites of calcium form on the inside of the kneecap, and they pull that back over. It kind of scrapes. Ow! It doesn't feel good. But she'll be going under, and they want her to start walking and breaking the adhesions right away. He doesn't want her to convalesce and loll about. So that's good to know. And then we'll do the next one, because the other one is going to get worn out, and it's already out. But she's been bouncing around on it, and, pretty soon she's going to wear that one out. And I don't want it worn out before she has this one taken care of, because she needs that one to be able to bounce about. Oh, boy. That is actually the story of our lives. We repair one side, and then our dominant side becomes whatever our dominant side is now our dominant side, because it's taking care of the weaker side. And then that dominant side weakens. And then we have to repair that. And the other side has to take up the slack. And we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Is that the kind of life that the great Almighty had in store for us? Apparently, yes. So much for volition, huh? Okay. I think I should just put a cap on it. Yeah, I will. And why don't we give you a rundown of what we have in store for you in the curated part of the show? The more orderly, narrative type of part of the show? Well, yes. Let us do that now as we tell you what's on the rest of the menu as we begin in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Jurors in Buffalo, New York are set to begin deliberating in the case against a former DEA agent accused of taking bribes from the mafia. Ooh. Major freight railroads will have to maintain two-person crews on most routes under a new federal rule. Pretty soon they want to get rid of all of them. I don't know. Is that good or bad? And a company that provides services for immigrants in federal detention was ordered to pay more than $811 million in restitution and penalties. Over what? Well, abusive tactics. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the deputy chief of Thailand's national police surrendered 2 authorities on money laundering charges, and a Peruvian archbishop who sued 2 journalists over their reports about sexual abuse and financial corruption in his religious movement has resigned amid a Vatican investigation. And trust me, it wasn't the sexual abuse. It was the financial corruption that he's running away from and that the Vatican was investigating, because that's how they will investigate. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. This usual time and pick it up tomorrow, hopefully, so that we can tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. And it is out of the Associated Press by the hard-working staff there at the Associated Press. 7 weeks of testimony that featured more than 70 witnesses left no doubt that a former U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agent accepted cash bribes to shield childhood friends and suspects with ties to organized crime from law enforcement, a prosecutor told jurors yesterday, Tuesday, wrapping up a case that could send the ex-agent to prison for life. Jurors are scheduled to begin deliberations today in the corruption trial of Joseph Bongiovanni, age 59. The former agent is charged with taking more than $250,000 in bribes from the Buffalo Mafia to derail drug investigations and to protect a strip club owned by a childhood friend. What is this? The Sopranos? That was described by prosecutors as a haven for drug use and sex trafficking. Wow, just like The Sopranos. He chose loyalty to criminal friends over duty, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joseph Trippi said during a 4-hour summation of the government's case. Well, yeah. Bongiovanni's attorney, Robert Singer, said prosecutors failed to prove the charges of bribery, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Singer disputed prosecutors' allegations that Bongiovanni was driven by financial pressures wrought in part by a divorce. Oh. Bon Giovanni and his current wife, Lindsay, lived paycheck to paycheck and relied on credit cards to support their lifestyle, something that wouldn't be necessary with the influx of cash prosecutors described, Singer said. Yeah, that's what all crooks say. Mr. Bon Giovanni did his job. He did it faithfully, and he did it without deceit, without dishonesty, Singer said. Bon Giovanni sat between his lawyers at the defense table during the proceedings in U.S. District Court, occasionally swiveling around in his chair, smiling at his wife and other relatives seated in the courtroom's front row. He did not testify at his trial. Well, of course, that would be stupid for him to do. Prosecutors contend that Bon Giovanni pocketed more than $250,000 in cash stuffed envelopes over a decade, and threw his colleagues off in part by opening bogus case files. He retired when authorities finally exposed the wrongdoing in 2019. Funk of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Major freight railroads will have to maintain two-person crews on most routes under a new federal rule that was finalized yesterday, Tuesday, in a milestone in organized labor's long fight to preserve the practice. The Transportation Department's Federal Railroad Administration released the details of the rule that was first proposed during Obama's administration. Out of more than 13,000 comments on the rule, about 60 opposed it. There has been intense focus on railroad safety since a fiery February 2023 derailment in Ohio, but few significant changes have been made apart from steps the railroads pledged to take themselves and the agreements they made to start providing paid sick time to nearly all workers. Such changes include adding hundreds more trackside detectors and tweaking how to respond to alerts from them. A railroad safety bill proposed in response to the derailment has stalled in Congress. Oh, you mean the MAGA House is holding it up? Rail unions have long opposed one-person crews because of safety and job concerns. Labor agreements requiring two-person crews have been in place for roughly 30 years at major railroads, although many short-line railroads already operate with one-person crews without problems. The unions say that conductors are crucial in helping operate the train and keeping engineers alert, and that they serve as first responders. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said the U.S. should not accept the current average of nearly 3 derailments a day, and that regulators will keep fighting to improve that record. In the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays is brought to us by Philip Marcello of the Associated Press. A company that provides services for immigrants in federal detention was ordered yesterday, Tuesday, to pay more than $811 million in restitution and penalties in a lawsuit that it used deceptive and abusive practices. Nexus Services must pay roughly $231 million in restitution, as well as penalties of $13.8 million to New York, $7.1 million to Virginia, and $3.4 million to Massachusetts, according to a judgment filed in federal court for the Western District of Virginia in Harrisonburg. The Virginia-based company, its subsidiary, Libra by Nexus, and its three executives must also each pay more than $111 million in civil penalties. This judgment is a victory for thousands of immigrant families who lost their life savings and were targeted and preyed upon by Libra. New York Attorney General Letitia James said in a statement, Libra exploited vulnerable immigrants and their families to pad his pockets, and that is illegal and unconscionable. James joined state attorneys general in Virginia and Massachusetts and the Federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in a 2021 lawsuit that accused the company of violating state and federal consumer protection laws. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, The Julio Torres Show. The debut from this former SNL writer, who wrote, directed, and stars in Problemista, is pretty much what you'd expect from him. It's quirky and absurd, juxtaposing deadpan and over-the-top, mostly in the right measure. Torres has the deadpan thing down as Alejandro, an aspiring immigrant toy designer from El Salvador, who has some interesting ideas for Hasbro, all the while dealing with the U.S. immigration system. Over-the-top duties are handled by an unrecognizable Tilda Swinton as Elizabeth, playing the role of an art critic wife of a cryogenically frozen painter, played by Riza, who did pictures of eggs exclusively before being diagnosed with a fatal illness. Alejandro, or Ali as he's called, meets Elizabeth as he's being fired from the cryo company that's storing her husband. Ali has to find a work sponsor within 30 days if he's to stay in the country, and what turns out to be the employment opportunity from hell emerges in a project to arrange an exhibition for the frozen egg artiste. Nice touches include some stylized set pieces representing the immigration system, his early life in El Salvador, which seems better than some stories we've heard, and even of Craigslist. In some ways, this one is a coming-of-age in the big city tale. Ali must navigate a corporatized world as literally an outsider, with none of the advantages of the rich white Elizabeth, who shows no awareness of how her status enables her rebellious nature. Beyond some mild comic send-ups, a broader critique of what kids like Ali are buying into with their dreams is not explored, but Problemista probably gets this right. After all, it's just one kid's well-told story. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For older adults, optimal aging includes preventing injuries, effectively managing existing chronic conditions, and maintaining physical and cognitive health and social engagement. I'm Dr. Linda Anderson, Director of CDC's Healthy Aging Program. The promotion of cognitive health is a critical component of overall good health. Cognitive health among older adults is not just the absence of disease. It's the development and preservation of cognitive abilities such as memory, language, judgment, and remembered skills such as driving. Cognitive abilities enable individuals to maintain social connectedness, an ongoing sense of purpose, and the ability to function independently. In 2013, CDC and the Alzheimer's Association released the second in a series of roadmaps. This roadmap, the Public Health Roadmap for State and National Partnerships 2013 to 2018, was developed as part of CDC's Healthy Brain Initiative. It reflects the insights and expertise of a wide range of stakeholders at the national, state, and community levels. The roadmap shares the Healthy Brain Initiative's vision of cognitive health as a vital component of overall health and well-being, an area ripe for public health efforts. Specific actions are addressed in 4 traditional domains of public health. The first is monitor and evaluate. Tracking the health of the nation is a fundamental public health function. Actions in this area include assessments related to cognitive health that help quantify and qualify the public health impact and inform public health policies and strategies. The second domain is educate and empower the nation, which focuses on actions that raise public awareness and improve access to information and resources. The third domain, develop policy and mobilize partnerships, includes actions aimed at ensuring that cognitive health is integrated into a broad spectrum of public health work. The fourth area, assure a competent workforce, focuses on preparing public health professionals to translate current and emerging findings on cognitive health into effective public health practice. This roadmap provides a solid foundation for the public health community to anticipate and respond as new scientific discoveries related to cognitive health emerge. Public health agencies and partners are encouraged to work together on actions that best fit their mission, needs, interests, and capabilities. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/aging/healthybrain.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for
summer break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night,
hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time
landing a job and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
This Civil Liberties Minute is about school dress codes, racism, and conformity. I'm Bill Newman. Texas, like about half the states, has a Crown Act. Crown, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair, a Texas law that prohibits discrimination based on hair texture or protective hairstyle commonly or historically associated with race. But the law hasn't protected 18-year-old Darryl George, who has locks, rope-like strands that he pins on his head in a barrel row, a protective hairstyle that reflects black culture. Notwithstanding the Crown Act, the dress code in Darryl's high school in Mont Belvieu, Texas, prohibits hair that could extend beyond the top of a T-shirt collar. The fact that Darryl has never let his hair down in school was irrelevant. And recently, the state district court judge hearing the case agreed, ruling that because the Crown Act doesn't specifically mention hair length, the school could legally discipline Darryl as it has, including suspensions and relegating him to an off-campus disciplinary program because he wouldn't cut off his locks. What lesson should we learn from this school dispute? Well, the superintendent once explained his view that, quote, being an American requires conformity. There's another significant claim in the related federal case. Because the dress code targets black male students, it violates federal civil rights law. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. On the eve of former President Donald Trump's first criminal trial, the media has focused on the salacious details, but not as much on the cover-up of the less titillating campaign finance violations. In 2018, Free Speech for People and Common Cause filed complaints with the notoriously dysfunctional Federal Election Commission regarding campaign finance violations by candidate Donald Trump. They alleged not only were payments made to keep affairs with Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal quiet, but were covered up with Trump's participation. Since the payments attempted to keep the news from affecting his election, they became unreported campaign expenditures and violations of the Federal Election Campaign Act. While the FEC's professional staff recommended prosecution, the commission deadlocked and killed the complaints. The U.S. Justice Department took action against Trump attorney Michael Cohen, who served 2 years in jail and home confinement. But in November 2022, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland chose not to pursue the campaign finance charges against Trump. Shortly after, the pending New York State case was filed, alleging not campaign finance violations, but the falsifying of business records. Because the falsification covered up the federal violations, the actions became a felony under New York law. The trial begins April 15th in New York. We have links to the FEC complaints at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day over 1,000 auto workers at the Ford assembly plant in Kansas City, Missouri, began their occupation. The sit-down was the first strike by the UAW against Ford. UAW President Homer Martin vowed to organize the entire company. The strike had been called the previous evening, when workers learned 350 of their co-workers had been laid off at the end of the day's shift. They demanded reinstatement, higher wages, better working conditions, and recognition of their union. The workers spent a good part of the early morning hours welding the gates shut to the railroad yards and parking lots surrounding the plant. Then they selected an 18-man committee to direct the strike. One leader, O.W. Penny, stated, quote, "When the company forced the strike on us by unfairly laying off men because of their union membership, some with 12 years on the job, everybody joined up with us. We signed 200 outside the plant, and they're signing others inside." Penny added, "The pay here is not as good as at either Chevrolet or Chrysler plants. The boys there have better sanitary facilities and a cafeteria, while we have to eat our lunches sitting on the floor." Strikers lowered a banner from the top floor of the plant that read, "Lincoln freed the slaves, Ford brought them back." Ford insisted he would never allow his plants to be organized, but company representatives spent the weekend negotiating a settlement with the UAW to rescind the layoffs. By Monday, April 5th, the workers were back on the line. Strike authorizations would flare up just 2 weeks later when Penny and another UAW organizer were beaten at the hands of company thugs. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And we are under cloudy conditions and expecting highs of only 51 today, so much cooler than it was yesterday. Light rain early, which is occurring as we speak, then remaining cloudy with showers in the afternoon. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we're going to get something a little less than a quarter inch of rain for today. Then cloudy skies this evening will become partly cloudy overnight. And looks like lows are going to be in the mid-30s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Considerable clouds early tomorrow, Thursday. Some decrease in clouds later in the day. Highs in the low 50s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. That looks like more rain coming in on Friday through the weekend. Grass pollen is in the moderate range here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 25 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is high at level 6. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.22 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 76%. Weather from around the world is brought to us by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 56 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 62 degrees and mostly cloudy with a flood watch because they've been getting quite a bit of rain. Rome is 65 degrees and partly cloudy. Bagram is 50 and clear. Hong Kong is 65 and cloudy. Tokyo is 53 degrees with rain. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 54 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53 and cloudy with a river flood watch. Chicago, Illinois is 37 degrees with snow, and they have a storm warning. I wonder why. New York is 41 degrees Fahrenheit, showers in the vicinity, and also a storm watch. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowdsources from around the world. Thomas Saxonchai of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at Wesco's Cookbook and Speakeasy. A deputy chief of Thailand's National Police Force, involved in many high-profile cases, turned himself in to fellow officers yesterday, Tuesday, after a court issued a warrant for his arrest on money laundering charges. Police General Surchet Hakparn had recently been suspended from his duties due to his involvement in infighting among the department's top ranks. Surachate went to Bangkok's Tao Poon neighborhood police station last night to hear the charges against him, and after several hours emerged to tell reporters he had come to comply with the warrant and would let due process take its course. "I'm not worried," he commented, as he jostled through his way through a scrum of reporters before getting into a waiting car. He said he had been released on bail, but did not specify the amount. Nicole Winfield and Franklin Bisegno of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at Wesco's Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A Peruvian archbishop who sued two journalists over their reports about sexual abuse and alleged financial corruption in his religious movement, the Solidarium Christianae Vicae, has resigned amid a Vatican investigation. Pope Francis accepted the resignation of Pior Archbishop Jose Eguren at 67. He is several years shy of the normal retirement age for bishops of age 75. The Vatican did not say why Eguren was retiring early in its brief announcement, but the Vatican last year began an in-depth investigation into alleged abuse and, probably more important to the Catholic Church, financial wrongdoing in the Peruvian-based Solidarium, in which Aragon belongs. The Vatican had its eye on the group, which has chapters across South America and the U.S. for over a decade. In 2017, a report commissioned by the group's new leadership determined that its founder, Luis Fernando Figari, sodomized his recruits and subjected them to humiliating psychological and other sexual abuses. The Vatican has had its eye on the group, which has chapters across South America and the U.S. for over a decade. In 2017, a report commissioned by the group's new leadership determined that its founder, Luis Fernando Figari, sodomized his recruits and subjected them to humiliating psychological and other sexual abuses. Those abuses first came to light in 2015. thanks to reporting by Peruvian journalists Pedro Salinas and Paula Ugaz. In addition to Fagari's own abuses, their reporting exposed the forced eviction of peasants on lands in Egaran's diocese by a Solidicium-linked real estate developer. In 2018, Egaran sued them for defamation, seeking about $100,000 total and jail time for what he alleged was damage to his honor and reputation. He dropped the aggravated defamation lawsuit in 2019 after he came under criticism from even within the Peruvian church. Last year, the Vatican sent its 2 top sex abuse investigators to Peru to investigate not only allegations of sexual and psychological abuses still in the Solidicium, but also, more importantly, those allegations of financial corruption. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.